And we are back. Scott Miller has his camera turned off. This is the Awake Nation. We are on our final hour of today. This is our 5th hour. And our guest has not shown up. She was here earlier. She did say she had to walk her dog. And I've got dogs on the brain.
Don't get your dogs mixed up.
Only because one of our dogs had puppies.
Oh,
Another one. And so Lily is going to be spazzing out. So you guys might have to actually, you guys might have to actually
have to take over.
Yes, because Lily's been running back and forth and she hears the puppies because they're like right outside underneath the stairs.
Oh, you need to bring a puppy on. Let us see.
No, they're I'm not crawling under there. I will come back with like dirt all over my face and stuff. But so we don't know how many puppies she had. We have neutered a lot of dogs so far. The last couple of days, the dogs have been neutered, but apparently I think Freedom just hit everybody. His name is Freedom. Freedom used to be on the show. We made him like our mascot, but then he just kind of turned a little mean. You know how Freedom is. Once you get a little freedom, you might get a little.
Goes to your head.
Right, it goes to your head when you just get a little bit of freedom. And he's kind of the boss of all the dogs. So anyway, she said she was in like way earlier. I'm gonna just do her intro. Nurse Kate Shemarani, I hope I said her name right, natural nurse in a toxic world. Kate was suspended by the Nursing and Midwifery Council, NMC, in July of 2020. She is the Sons of Liberty's health and wellness expert. She was arrested after emceeing a rally against a tyrannical lockdown and lies from the British government concerning COVID-19 and vaccinations, along with the rollout of 5G. We've had her on before, and she's going to be coming on a weekly basis. Hopefully she won't be walking her dogs beforehand, because I hope she didn't get dog napped or something. What? Does anyone know her family? You said you knew her.
Well, I don't know her personally, but I watched her. She was on Sons of Liberty, and I always watch her Saturday show with Tim Brown. Love it.
So what issues does she talk about? Because I know she is a natural nurse, and she speaks about homeopathic remedies.
Herbs, tinctures, all kind of things. Because, I lived in Scotland, and so I was real interested to talk with her, because they really, the NHS is, like royalty over there.
Yes.
And if you remember in, April of 2020, when all this came out, and, my son-in-law is actually Scottish or British, British Scottish. He's claiming his more Scottish roots, even after growing up in England. But he was over there with his mother in Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland, when all this started going on, because he came back from, they went to the Philippines for a wedding with one of Chrissy's team. And they were coming back he came back through Scotland. She came back to Miami. It's when they were redoing their condo here. And what was funny about it is they would, if you remember, you probably do remember this. It was when the dancing nurses, wherever they were here.
Yes. What was it with that? That was the weirdest thing ever, Pamela.
Mm-hmm. But they would, at 8:30 at night. Now, this is, you got to think about, this is all of the UK, how, I won't say how influenced they are. I won't use the, that term.
The mind controls?
Yeah, that. Because I've got American friends over there. They just follow lockstep. Whatever that the National Health Institute tells them to do, if it's like, take the poison, you take the poison, So what Kate's doing is lining up, but they were at 8:30 at night. They would all go to their doors. And this was like March of 2020, maybe the end of March, when all this was like a mystery and the nurses were the heroes and all that. And everybody would go to their front door, and they would do something like, do this chant, like, or clapping. I think it was a clapping for the nurses and the doctors of the system. And
For the COVID doctors that were giving
Mhm.
the shots.
Yes. Well, the shots hadn't come out then. Think about it. March of 2020 is when everybody was locked down. And boy, when they say lockdown in Scotland, they're going to lock down. Trust me.
Seriously?
Oh, I'm telling you. I mean,
Like, you can't go to the store, you can't do anything,
Nope.
order in for a year,
You do exactly what they say to do. And I'm telling you,
haggis for everybody.
the gal that I rented my flat from, she couldn't see her dad for 8 months
Oh my God.
because they forbid travel. Now, think about this. Boyd's mom lives on the west coast of Scotland. His brother lives in London, and his brother couldn't, I'm not saying that he might have thought that was a good or bad thing, that he couldn't go see his mom, but they wouldn't allow travel. I knew people in Scotland, friends of mine in Scotland, that have grandkids in England, like in around, I don't know. Anyway, they couldn't see their grandkids for 8 months because the government tells them lockdown, and they take it so seriously.
We're talking, Scott, about our guest who is MIA right now. She checked in earlier, like way earlier. And
well, it's hard
then,
to. I'll tell you, Penny. It's hard to because they're 5 hours ahead, and it's always a challenge because it's 6 o'clock there.
yeah, that's what I
6
figured.
o'clock
It will be
there.
6 o'clock for her this time because she
Mhm.
checked in at like 4, which was 10 our time. And then I said,
yeah.
I think you're actually you're an hour and 45 minutes early. You can
Mhm.
hang out, but she
Mhm.
said, I'm going to go walk my dog. So hopefully nothing happened with the dogs. I'm going to give just a little bit a background. Oh, wait a minute. She might be coming in. Kate Ellison, there she is. What am I seeing even?
Mm.
Okay, she's setting up. She was born in 1965. This is from her wiki. Of course, they call her a British conspiracy theorist and anti-vaccine activist, right? A former nurse who lost her license to practice in 2020 for misconduct. She's best known for promoting, they say, conspiracy theories. I say facts about COVID-19 vaccinations and 5G technology. She's been described by the Jewish Chronicle, wow, as a leading figure of a movement that includes conspiracy theorists as well as far left and far right activists. She's getting settled right now, so I'm just going to let her finish that. She describes herself as a natural nurse in a toxic world. She was suspended by the Nursing and Midwifery Council, NMC, in July 2020 in response to complaints that she was spreading conspiracy theories and misinformation about COVID-19, which we all know was not misinformation. It was factual information about vaccines, and struck off with a right to appeal after 5 years in May of 2021. She looks like she's getting situated right there. The beautiful and fabulous Kate, I hope I say her name right, Shimarani. Here she is.
I love the fact that you've just said all that rubbish that Wikipedia posts. I mean, they couldn't come up with any more garbage.
Right.
As in the Jewish Chronicle, that was an interesting one because they got really offended because I've been saying on Twitter, when are people going to wake up when they're on the cattle trucks or in the showers? And I found it quite ironic. I actually said to them, be offended. I said, I'm offended that the elderly are getting murdered. And it's quite interesting because a lot of Jewish people, of course, have come out and likened what's happening to the Holocaust. But, one must never, you can't ever, nobody can ever jump on that Holocaust. That's theirs. And you can't ever say, and also as well, we must remember that during those times, the gypsy population was slaughtered, disabled, elderly, Jewish, Jehovah's Witnesses, Christians, Polish, Russians. There's a lot of people died then. And actually, way before any of that started, the Germans were guillotining their own elderly and disabled in the basements of the town halls.
Their eugenics for that war were funded by the Rockefellers, who had started eugenics in the 20s, way prior to that particular war. I'm going to introduce to you the panel that we have here. Our 5th hour, we're always going to have a panel. So we have Karen Britt. Karen Britt is is executive producer. Karen, can you introduce yourself to Kate?
Sure. Hey, Kate. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you.
Can you tell her a little bit about some of the things that you do? The shows?
Yeah, I do executive producer for Kingdom Talks and The Quest for Truth. Also doing this show. And then I have my own show too for the East Coast Hub. And we bring on all of us on every platform that I'm on. We're bringing on people that, are bringing truth to light.
Yes. And then she also is a singer, Kate. She has the elasticband.com. I'm a singer as well. Pamela, I don't think you're a singer, but can you tell her a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. Hi, Kate. I am, I'm Pamela Reeves. I recently lived in Scotland part-time. And so I was just informing them of how the Scottish and people in the UK follow lockstep with that NHS. And am I right? And
I trained as a nurse actually in Glasgow in Scotland in 1984, and I nursed up there through the 80s.
University of Glasgow. I have American friends. Yeah,
the Glasgow Royal Infirmary. So our School of Nursing and Midwifery, as it was then, was opposite the engineering division of the university, because we all used to stand and wave to all the boys. But yeah, the NHS, the National Homicide Service, as I like to call it.
Right. And then our final person who's here, he has been most severely affected. Scott, can you tell her what happened to you and your brief history with what's happened to you in the United States?
So, hi, Kate. Yeah, I had a pediatric medical practice. I started treating COVID very early. I started speaking out. I spoke at our Capitol about what was happening to our kids. I ended up, I have the dubious honor of having the first person in the U.S. to have a medical suspension of an emergency suspension of my license for using ivermectin and speaking out against the hospital protocols. And according to the Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, the most dangerous man in Washington for my disinformation campaign. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, getting to see the inside of the beast from a legal standpoint.
And of course, I was known as the most dangerous woman in Britain. I didn't actually have my license. They like to say that they took my license away. I served all of those on those hearings with notice of genocide. And then when I got to the third hearing, even the woman who was taking the notes, the look on her face was priceless when she got it. Because I was emailing them as they were talking. But I stopped engaging with them. And I said that under the 2006 Terrorism Act, they were a terrorist organization, and I was forbidden from funding a terrorist organization. Therefore, I wanted all my money back. And if they continued to contact me, I'd seek legal advice for harassment. So they went ahead, and I said I resigned. They said, you can't resign. I said, well, I can, because you've broken due process. Therefore, you've broken contract with me, so I can resign. And then they just went and had all these hearings in my absence, which I don't really care. I don't want their license. Why would I? It's like, knocking on the door of an execution chamber and saying, can I have my job back? I don't want it. I don't want to work for them, or I don't want any. So when people say, like yourself, oh, you're not a nurse. No, only the title of registered is protected by Parliament. Just because you don't have a license doesn't mean all your knowledge goes out your head. And anyway, what nursing did I learn when I was in nursing school? Not very much. So I don't want to be part of what they do. And you look kind of slim. When I saw all the TikTok videos of all the nurses and doctors, I've never seen so many fat healthcare professionals squeezed into scrubs, looking like well-stuffed Chesterfields. If they're healthcare professionals, why are they so fat and unhealthy looking? And it was incredible, the British ones. So why do I want to go into
and the cardiologists? Right, it was interesting. Like you'd see the cardiologists or cardiothoracic surgeons with the highest BMIs, and it's like, dudes, this is your profession. Like, this is your area of expertise. You should know what the biggest risk factors are for heart disease and death.
Yeah, but you've got these same cardiologists telling you, oh, bad cholesterol. The Lord doesn't put anything bad in us. Your low density lipoprotein is always found like the fire engines at the scene of a fire. So whenever you've got holes in your blood vessels because of mold or toxins, then you're going to get your low density lipoprotein going to plug up the holes. So to then have these fat cardiologists go and give you a drug, that's not medicine. It's all sorcery. It's rubbish. They do one good thing and everyone goes, aren't they good?
I just, it's so rare to hear somebody say that. It's like there's no, it's just a harmless carrier molecule taking, steroids, and it's innocent. It's when it's glycated.
Well, and to take your fat to your brain, you need it.
Yeah, it's energy.
Yeah, but this is the whole. That's why
Kate, Kate, you also have, I know we have a little bit of delay here. You also have, Scott has millerwellness.net, and you also have a website that people can come to and.
I have every domain going and the website's being built, but unfortunately, I haven't got any of them live yet, but they will be live soon. Don't worry, they will be.
Okay.
It's like when it finally goes live, it'll be fabulous. No, I do a lot of I work on like TNT, Sons of Liberty, but I also am on the ground. I have lots of patients worldwide that I work 7 days a week doing consults and writing programs out for them on nutrition. So that's what I've been doing. But what's happened is nurses are leaving the Nursing and Midwifery Council, thank God, in their droves. But what they're actually doing is they're bringing overseas nurses in from other countries. And these nurses now, a lot of them are seeing what's going on, and they don't want to be part of it anymore. And for the nurses that, I've worked in A&E, I've worked in gynecology, I've worked in theatres, I worked in the very first phone NHS Direct, it was called. I was one of the inaugural nurses. That's why when they say she's not a nurse, I just don't even answer them. I can't be bothered. But all of those things, yeah, we see great things done in A&E, but the rest of the whole healthcare industry is about degenerative disease. And it's all completely avoidable. And they're not they don't teach doctors about how to avoid and reverse disease. And they certainly don't teach nurses. So it's really they're just drug pimps. That's all it is. And all the real things that work, even when there's evidence-based studies, and it was in all of their magazines that they like to pat each other on the back for, their peer-reviewed studies in these magazines. There's masses of information you can find on hydrogen peroxide, on colloidal silver, on chlorine dioxide, on DMSO. It's all there, and but they don't use any of that anymore. Even epilepsy. There was loads of studies looking at controlling epilepsy with the diet, and then as soon as the drug came in, benzodiazepine, epilim, all that went by the wayside. So
and then you have to also with the side effects, right? So from Keppra, I mean, when I hear a child is on, and oftentimes it's more than one. They're put on 2 or 3.
And really big doses that they build up to. So if any other kid in the house takes it and they've not built up to it, it's deadly. Yeah.
How did you? So you're just you throwing out just the list of it. Hydrogen peroxide, CDS, methylene blue, by the way, is another phenomenal neuroprotective.
Yeah, that is, but that was the first pharmaceutical drug that fires up the mitochondria. But one could argue on that front that what's stopping the mitochondria from firing up in the first place? Because I'm a great believer in taking the body to the point.
So how did you get to this state? Because you're more knowledgeable. Just just in the few minutes I've heard you speaking, you're more knowledgeable from a I would say a healing standpoint than 99% of allopathic trained providers. How did this happen?
In 2012, when I had 4 fairly young kids, and my ex-husband was in banking and is a doctor of computer science, I was diagnosed with a really aggressive breast cancer, lobular invasive grade 3 breast cancer with I think it had a 78% pleomorphic presentation. So right up into the tail of the breast, under the arm. And so I had private healthcare. And so because I was a nurse and because I had private healthcare, and also my brother-in-law is Iran's top urologist, part owns the hospital in Tehran. So he had the oncology team look at my notes there as well. So I got all this wonderful care, and within 3 weeks I was in the hospital and I had surgery, a double mastectomy and a reconstruction. I wouldn't let them take any lymph nodes out apart from the sentinel node, because I remembered, working and seeing people with lymphedema. Anyway, I'd got into the hospital with 2 books that my husband had already began researching, and one of those books was the China study, and the other book was Dr. Max Gerson, a report of 50 cases.
Wow.
On day two, I had 5 drains. I'd had a massive bleed. They'd just as I was coming around from the anaesthetic, they told me that they had to re-anaesthetize me, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I'm not going to see my kids. And my children, only one was in secondary school. The other 3 were all in elementary school still. So 9, 11, and 13. So I had a 13-year-old, 11-year-old twins, and a 9-year-old. And so I went in with this book and I began to read, and I thought, I've made a mistake. So I talked the surgeon that day 2, into letting me go home with these 5 drains. And the next day, or certainly by day 11, through my ex-husband's research and procuring everything, I began the full Gerson therapy on my own from the book. And all of the health issues I'd had prior to that, they all went within 6 weeks. And I was, exercising, going to the gym, doing belly dancing, cycling, and I was still getting fatter and fatter. And all of a sudden, within 6 weeks, I lost 36 pounds in weight. I could now read without glasses. And that was the March I began the Gerson therapy. By the July, I was really toxic. And for anyone who doesn't know the Gerson therapy, I had 4 kids. I was driving 90 miles a day to get them to school and back and everywhere else. My husband was gone at 5:30 in the morning, and I just had to get on with it. I did 13 fresh juices a day. I did 5, originally 4, and then when I got a practitioner 6 weeks in, 5 coffee enemas a day. Fat-free, salt-free, sugar-free vegan diet for 2 years. After 6 weeks, it was 200 mils fat-free yogurt. I did high-dose oral vitamin C. I did the B17 protocol, tablet protocol. And I did mistletoe injections for 1 year into my abdomen. And I did it all, and that was 11 years ago. And I'm alive and well and cancer-free. Well, I wanted to know why I got cancer. Because my ex-husband said everything is cause and effect. Nothing's random. And the surgeon to this day is wonderful. He still scans me for my reconstruction, but he leaves me to it. And he does secretly, he'll always ask me, never has a nurse in. And he'll say, what's new? What are you doing now? And I know he's told other patients to do it. But it was interesting because...
What were you had said, with your weight loss that what other comorbidities did you have prior to?
Well, I didn't know at that stage. I'd flown for BA for almost a decade, and I'd had loads of injections, vaccines. So I'd had childhood vaccines in nursing, and vaccines as long-haul cabin crew. So cabin crew have 10 times the national average for cancer if they fly 7 to 10 years. And so I had psoriasis on my scalp. I then found out that I had autoimmune thyroiditis. I was starting to get lots of joint pains, plantar fasciitis. I had all the typical signs of low functioning thyroid, terrible menses, painful breasts, outer canthus of my eyebrow gone. So all ectopic heartbeat, all of these things started to go, and I lost all this weight by eating masses of food. And so that was when I started looking into vaccines and what was in them, and then I realized that everything I'd ever been taught in nursing was a lie. All of it was just rubbish.
Did you say the outer area of your eyebrows?
The outer canthus of my eyebrow from the arch was thinning and going, which is classic for low functioning thyroid.
Yeah, you're only the maybe second or third person that I've heard recognize that as a thyroid. So you're
and you get other things. You know, I would often get this pain in my where my intercostal muscles were and where your ribs were, the joints, and I now know all of these things as I've taught myself. I have a huge collection of books. I don't have a telly, but I began to I thought, maybe I should go and be a naturopathic doctor, and I thought, no, I can't afford it, I'll teach myself. so I began teaching myself, and I used my the fact that I was an aesthetics nurse, and in this country you don't need to be a nurse, you can just be an aesthetics practitioner. I'm just about to go and do the intravenous course. I hope he's not watching, because then I'm going to rip his course off. I'm just going to rewrite the course, because I don't believe you need to be registered with their stuff to do it. And this is why we've set up the British, I say we, it's me and my mate round the corner, but the British Nursing Alliance, because I believe nurses should be on the ground, living among their communities, knowing the family, recognizing that things are not genetic. They're just because families live and eat the same way. So they start off with that constitution, and then it gets pummeled. So this is why you see it in families, and also to get the children before they're even conceived, if you like. That most important year of a child's life is the year before it's conceived. So, get those young girls eating properly and living a cleaner life. And thankfully, I have two very beautiful daughters. It's wonderful, because my daughter said to me the other day, fellas don't like those big boobs, pumped up lips, eyelashes, fake tan. They like a more natural girl now. So, this is beginning to turn around. That was kind of music to my ears. My daughters.
How old are they?
22 and 20. One is just about to finish a 4-year course at Cambridge University, and the other one is at the other devil's hide, University College London, where she's doing maths and computer science. So they're right in the mix of it, but they'd kill me if they knew. But they don't use, they use the rhythm method. They take their temperature. They know when they're ovulating. I've told them about Spinnenbar, about their mucus, about the whole cycle and how your body works. They use a moon cup for menstruation instead of, toxic, horrible tampons. And they're not the only one young. They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. One is like a glamour chick, and the other one doesn't shave her legs and embraces her monobrow. They're a bit of a dichotomy, but that the fact that these young women now are learning about their bodies, using the right things. So I love that. I love the fact that something I must have said must have sunk in somewhere, but nurses need to live among their communities and know the families to recognize when things are going wrong and head it off, not inject them and watch them eat garbage. And then, it's mental. The whole medical industry, I don't know what they think they're doing. The fact that you've got, I love prodding the beast. I got my Twitter account back recently. I was only on there for a few months with 20,000. Now I've got nearly 40. But, I put a load of stuff on there about hydrogen peroxide. It was great because the trolls come out the woodwork like you wouldn't believe. They're all running around.
Right.
She's saying drink bleach. She's
Right.
saying inject it. But, I'm not saying it. Lots of people have said it in studies, in the Lancet, in everywhere else. The fact that very early in the 1900s, you have a doctor who dared to postulate that the reason patients have pain from arthritis in their joints is because of bacteria and the toxins it gives off, and when you oxygenate it stops it. Then you look at Professor Moskulu, the mucusless diet, not just Dr. Max Gerson. This has all been done before.
Well, in the 1800s, late 1890s, where they had sanitariums, where Ellen White's like, hey, maybe these tuberculosis patients should be outside getting sunshine, like maybe near infrared light is important, and vitamin D
Yeah,
is foundational. Right?
Absolutely.
And they went from that to let's lock them into a dungeon and not let anyone see them and propagate fear. And I mean, it's like they literally, it's like, let's take everything we know about healing, flush it down the toilet, and run as far in the opposite direction as we can from it, and then shut the lights off. It's like it's mind-boggling, apart from the trillions of dollars that they get.
Yeah, so why are we calling these people nurses and doctors anymore? They're not nurses.
No, they're not.
And they're not doctors, because the very fact that the most prescribed drug is an anti-inflammatory, and you've got something like a 400% increased risk of being admitted to hospital if you're on one. The fact that it blocks, what is it, the COX-1 pathways,
yeah.
And then you've got the very basics of you'll no longer make your osteoclasts. So you're going to start laying osteoblasts down on a horrible rocky road, and then they wonder why, if you take anti-inflammatories, you've got an increased risk of osteoporosis. I mean,
so just for our audience, osteoclasts, those are cells that break down and reform bone.
I remember it like this for the audience. If you go in and you want to be really smart with your doctors, if you think of cement begins with the letter C, the osteoclasts break down the bone to form a cement, and the osteoblasts, think of B for build, they build the new bone on that cement. And I love little ways to remember it. But why are we calling these people doctors and nurses? They're not anything of the sort. We've just seen what they did during COVID. They lied.
Oh, I like it. COVID.
Yeah, they lied when the hospitals weren't full. They took food parcels. They took discounts everywhere. I'm a dancer. I did ballet till I was 20. Then I did belly dancing. Now I'm learning flamenco. And I develop an extra leg when the music speeds up. But the point is, I know that to learn a dance routine, you've got to practice.
That is correct.
They did these great big dance routines. So clearly they didn't have any patience. So when they say, oh, we're overworked and we're underpaid, well, how come you're so fat then? Because most overworked and underpaid generally means that they don't have a lot of money to buy groceries or even buy cheap groceries. So, stop giving these people the idolatry. They were parts. If they said nothing, then they were complicit in a crime. If they actively did it, they were part of that crime.
Well, in the U.S., I don't know what it was in the UK, but with remdesivir, and it wasn't just that, but I advocated for people in, I don't know, I've probably 20 states now. 800 hours. I think I've probably spent over 800 hours on phone calls with hospitals, and like a switch being flipped, every single one except for a small hospital in Northern California, the nurses and doctors would say almost the exact same thing with every question I asked. I mean, it was scripted. When I'd bring up glutathione, I got in trouble for somehow saying, glutathione, the lack of glutathione was like the highest risk factor for severe disease, illness, death. I got nailed for saying that by the state. Thought that was like the most, or melatonin is important, just basic things. There was such a zero tolerance, but every single doctor. Well, there's no studies for COVID. There's no studies for COVID, and it's like about just in general, just generally speaking, when we're talking about inflammation and reactive oxygen, but it's like that one word. It's like COVID somehow took them for what you said. They were no longer doctors. They were literally just it's still going on, but just puppets. They were
following in this country. We had NG159, then it was NG163, then NG191, then 27.2, then I think it's 27.7. They were just guidelines and they followed them. And by following them, they broke their code of professional conduct, the NMC, and they broke their GMC. So they were no longer advocating for the patient. They were now in algorithmic medicine. What's quite interesting that no one is talking about, and I absolutely no, I've heard it straight from the horse's mouth, that even a lot of doctors in what they call the freedom movement have taken payoffs to not speak about it. So the one thing I think that we have to talk about here is the fact that the reason that your ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine worked is because they're anti-parasitic drugs. So if we look at what happened, these patients would present and they would be sick. Well, viruses, regardless of whether you believe that a virus exists or whether you believe, exosomes and viruses are one of the same, we know that there are genetically modified viruses. We know that these things have been forced together. So if we just all stay on that page, bacteria, viruses, mold, parasites, but definitely bacteria, mold, viruses, and fungus will proliferate when hit with over, when you start getting up to the 60 gigahertz. During the first unlawful lockup, they laid 5G everywhere. No one's talking about this. This is the gun. This is the kicker. So 2.45 gigahertz to 5.8 gigahertz was a weapon that we were tricked to bring into our homes. That's your Wi-Fi. That opens the blood-brain barrier. You put glyphosate, which unfolds the hemoglobin. It's in the water table. It's everywhere. It's used everywhere around the world. But you put that with aluminium and it forms 6 new compounds in the gut. Dr. Klinkart covered that. You then come in with the Wi-Fi and you're going to get that straight up to the brain, to the pineal gland, which you've just mentioned. And we know that our circadian rhythm, it's not just melatonin that's made in the pineal gland. And we know that you need by about 2:30 in the morning, it's at maximum production. But you've got all your street furniture with LED lights in, which are not insured. So now you have the 5G technology, which is there. There are documents that I was just talking to someone about, where they're saying that it's actually the viruses, etc., that is in the lipid nanoparcel, which when they hit it with 16 to 18 gigahertz, it will break open. Well, if you've got a patient with a poor constitution, let's say they're eating a lot of sugar, white acid poison. We're not talking about what the Lord gave us, natural sugars. We know that every molecule of fructose is going to use all 56 molecules of your magnesium right there. That's what your angina is. People talk about angina and cramps and muscle twitching. It's lack of magnesium.
Yes.
But no one gives you that. They go and give you GTN spray. So what is that? Silver nitrate, whatever. But the point is, so you now have all these patients that have had these vaccines, these COVID shots that are not a vaccine. We know it's bioengineering. We're not, it's all been talked about. But think about all of the other shots that they give to everybody that they've just done the whole round of again in the autumn months, all the elderly, all the vulnerable. They gave them the flu shot. And I think back in 2019 had 4 untested influenzas and highly pathogenic H1N1. So they give them the flu shot. They give them the shingles shot. They give them the pneumonia shot. Then they give them the COVID booster. And then you've got all your children's vaccines that we know have got aluminium, mercury, aluminium, which turns off the first part of your immune response. It shuts down your leukocytes, lymphocytes, your macrophages A and B, turns all that down, but ramps up the second part, your cytokine response, your temperature, your fluid. So you've got aluminium in there. You've got mercury in there. Both of those go through the blood-brain barrier. Why do they? Because they put polysorbitol 18, but because 2.45 to 5.8 gigahertz your Wi-Fi. So you've got all that. Then you've got all of the other things that are in there: viruses, funguses, mold, bacteria, parasites, everything in Thessalonians in the Bible. It tells us that we're not to have in our bodies is in these shots. So now you've got a whole load of people loaded up and ready and rocking, ready to go, for them to bring in the very next part of this direct energy weapon system that lots of these freedom doctors are not talking about because they're bought and paid for. They didn't lay it for your movies or your mobile phones, because if they did, how come I can drive around the entire neighborhood and not get any service on my phone? But there's these masks everywhere. They're on top of every school, every hospital. They're in the churches. They've laid it everywhere because That's the kicker. That's the gun. So when they've loaded everybody up with everything else and they're genetically modifying all the food, it's a cluster bomb. So you're going to see all of these people that have got all of this in them, they're going to get sick. And that's why you see your ivermectin and your hydroxychloroquine and your chlorine dioxide and your DMSO, which the Christian missionaries have been clearing malaria in 2 hours, which is a parasitic infestation. You see these things working, but they don't want you to talk about that. And a lot of these freedom doctors aren't talking about it because they're bought and paid for, doing their rounds, doing their tours, all of them. It's happening everywhere. You know, we're going to live in a whole new way. No, you're not, because these people have set all of this 5G up, not because they like us, not because the government love us. It's because it's part of this agenda. They've loaded everybody up with the bullets. Now they're going to fire the gun.
You know, Kate, there was a case in the UK in which a woman went in and she talked to her doctor and said that the 5G was giving her headaches. And the next day, 4 men in their white coats came and arrested her and threw her in the crazy house. She was like, what in God's name? They said that she was they didn't even say she was spreading misinformation. They said, you're crazy, and threw her in a mental health facility.
Yeah, I know that lady. If you look through, you talked about Nazi Germany. When all of these things happen, the very first thing that they do, and they did it again in lockstep, Britain, America, Europe, they changed the mental health laws. So it used to be that you needed 3 doctors, 3 psychiatrists to say that you needed to be sectioned under the Mental Health Act.
Okay.
At 6 weeks, you could then appeal that and be reassessed. And in 2019, there were 9,000 appeals against medication that was mandated for these patients. And
Yes.
16,000 appeals and 9,000 were upheld. So what they did with the Coronavirus Act, they changed it now from 3 psychiatrists to 1 doctor, not even a psychiatrist.
Wow.
You could no longer appeal, and you were no longer were reassessed at 6 weeks. And this happened in the UK. It's the same in America, and it happened in Europe. So all these things were done in lockstep because this is an agenda.
What happened to the woman? What happened to that woman?
I think she was, if it's the lady I'm thinking of, without giving too much away, I did involve a psychiatrist that I know. But I believe a similar thing happened to a German medical lawyer early into it in 2020. And she'd won many cases. She was harassed and she was sectioned as well in Germany. She later got out. But this is just old tactics. They did it in Soviet Russia.
Yes.
They do these things. They never change the script.
No, they've done it with whistleblowers throughout time. They will falsely say that they're crazy or schizophrenic and lock them up. It happened to me, Kate.
Well, they had
I think when they say I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I, who said that. You know,
well, they had a doctor in Canada that broke a story on the miscarriages, and he was what, 81, 82, Dr. Bouchard, and 8 people show up to his house, like the Canadian version of the FBI, I don't know, and involuntarily hauled him away, put him in a mental health institution, and started him on quetiapine, with against there was no consent, and they had to. Another doctor was able to jailbreak him out. It was kind of a cool story. I ended up talking to them while they were in between safe houses. But
yeah, I saw some of that, and I think they did the same with a gentleman in Switzerland. But these are just, this is what they do, and I think it's done to shut people up. Before this live, this is why I was a few minutes late. I was speaking to a Greek doctor who has many, many letters after his name. He's incredible. And I'd done a documentary for them in Greece. And it had also gone on mainstream. And I've been in touch with him for the last few years. And they're now investigating the blood to set up a separate blood bank for the uninjected.
Yes.
And we had this long conversation, and I've got some work to do and some connections to do for him. But it's very interesting when you go back to scripture and the life is in the blood.
Yes.
And we're told to guard our heart with all due diligence. And it takes me back, you know, when my children were young, these Jehovah's Witness ladies used to come to the door almost 20 years ago. They're still coming. And I would bring them in for a cup of tea. But I like to listen to people's beliefs and what they believe in. And I used to listen all these years. And it was 3 years ago I began to think about what they talked about and why they are against having a blood transfusion. And I can absolutely see what they're saying now. And also on the 22nd of May 2020, everybody in the UK, unless you opted out, you became an organ donor. Well, I'm very anti organ donor, and I love the work of Dr. Byrne. I think Dr. Byrne is how you pronounce it. And I believe he's American, and he's in his 80s now, and he was a neonatal doctor, and he championed the rights of those that were being earmarked to be organ donors. And on his website, it's wonderful because you can see 2 young people that were told, you know, that families were told they were brain dead and they were going to use them for organ donor. And both of them grew up, and one of them went to university, one of them got married and had children. So the whole thing of being brain dead and them taking your organs came out of the 1920s with the whole eugenics movement. Yes. And the Christian Barnard. So it's very interesting because, of course, when they take your organs, you're not anesthetized, you're just paralyzed.
Yes.
And all of this that's coming out of Ukraine now, where you've got surgeons speaking up about how they've been taking the organs out of the young soldiers. And even a young girl that was 8-year-old that was just unconscious after a blast, and both her and her father had their organs removed, and how it's done. And they've got teams going in, and it's terrible what's going on.
It's horrific.
But I think if we're going to speak about, you know, being against the breach of the house of God, which is what our bodies are, and our DNA, if you look at our DNA and a double helix strand, 93% function of it is light and sound transmission and reception. The fact that our proteins, our enzymes are all covered with layers and layers of this 4th state of water, this exclusion zone water. H3O2, it's negatively charged. All of that, we have to look at everything, and if we're going to say no to that, then we have to start looking at everything, the whole organ donor thing, because you know, people say, well, you would have one if you were going to die. No, I wouldn't have one. I'd accept that is God's will. And these patients have these organs, and then what the public don't know is it's not just, you know, happy ever after.
No, it's
they
not.
have to take masses of anti-rejection drugs.
Yes, they're a lifetime customer.
Yeah, they get very, very sick. They get lots of other things wrong with them, lots of cancer. So, you know, I think we have to look at everything. We have to now.
Okay. She's spinning.
Oh,
I think we lost.
I was gonna comment. I was gonna tell her something about the blood and the organs, and I don't know if any of you know this, but remember the special forces that Trump had every day, like at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock, whatever it was. You know, Fauci, Scarf Lady, Pence, all that. Well, there's a study that goes back to 1984 with Fauci being head of the HIV, and Dr. Deborah Birx gave birth. And I don't know if any of you have heard.
Hold on just a sec.
Okay.
Sorry, we lost you. Are you there?
Yeah, just when I was saying we need to not talk about, you know, we need to look at everything, organ donor, blood, everything. They kicked me out.
It's okay. I was just saying something about I don't know if any of you know the about the special forces that they had here in the United States that Trump had every day. Fauci, Scarf Lady, Dr. Deborah Birx, about their history with PEPFAR going back to the 1980s with HIV. And the fact that Deborah Birx, there's 2 things that I want to say about when you said about the blood in the organs, because it really strange because Deborah Birx refused a blood transfusion when she was going in and having her daughter, Melissa or Melinda, I can't remember her name perfectly, but she works for Bill Gates now. Okay, so she works for the Gates Foundation. Connect that up. And then another thing was in March of 2020, I was staying with my granddaughter, with my great-grandson, 10-month-old great-grandson, whose mother is my granddaughter, and she is a PA. Well, she was a nurse at the time, and then she was in school for going for a PA. And so she was, you know, you were talking about the nurses dancing and all that. Well, she wasn't on the floor, but she was in elective surgery. And she was the one that she was the head nurse in the OR with elective surgery. So what did they do? They cut down all the elective surgeries. It said you had to be in emergency surgery, you know, to qualify. So one day she was so afraid of losing her hours and all that, you know, because they were cutting their hours. So they were putting them at the door, checking people's temperatures, dressing people to go into the COVID patient's room, you know, just trying to fill in time. So one day I usually got the baby up when I was there. And so, but she liked to get him up on her days off. Well, I knew it was her day off, but I heard the baby crying. And so I texted her and I said, do you want me to get him up? And she goes, if you would. And so I thought maybe she was sick or something like that. And turns out that after she got up, I said, are you okay? And she goes, yeah, I just had to go in last night for emergency surgery. Now, this is when they were doing no surgeries. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah, it was organ harvesting.
Oh.
And that was when we were hearing, that was in Atlanta, North Atlanta, organ harvesting. And it was emergency surgery. You know, when you were talking about the organ transplant, and we've been hearing all about China and the meat lockers that they have and the big, huge, you know, from the, what are the healthy people that they want to get the organs from?
Yes.
I forget what they're called, you know, it was a big deal. But
the people, yeah, that it was a whole country that they took their children away.
Right. They don't want the organs of the people, the fat people and the unhealthy people. They want the organs of the healthy people. And so they're going to, you know.
But who is getting, you know, the way I kind of come and have peace from that is if people are having those organs, I mean, who would want that?
Right.
Because there's, it used to be thought that it was only your brain cells that kept memories, but they now know it's every cell in your body. Mm-hmm. And these very old books where we see the cauldrons with the people that, what were they called? They would eat one another. Cannibalism.
Yeah, cannibals.
And in ancient history, they would boil in these big cauldrons the opposing army. They would boil them because that got rid of the spirits, they would say. And if it was their own warriors, they would eat them raw to take on their spirit.
Yes.
So there's been there was one Dutch doctor that did a big study, and he looked at organ recipients who'd taken the organs of people. And one of them was a guy, you know, he received an organ from this younger man. And when he woke up, he had a desire to paint. And for the first time in his life as an older man, he began painting beautiful scenery. And it turned out that the donor was a lawyer, and his hobby had been painting. So, you know,
all this sounds very, very Twilight Zone, but it is real. It is real.
Study with a Dutch doctor that did the whole study. But
yes,
who would want to have the organs of someone else?
No
so you've got to look at whoever's having these. And and I just think those people that have met an untimely death and had that done to them, hopefully, you know, they've you know, redeemed themselves and they're with the Lord and in a better place. So
we're running short of time right now, but I want to let people know Kate is going to be with us every week, and she's going to be, you know, elucidating us with the truth. And in regards to, you know, I just wanted to put out there, it sounds Twilight Zone, Kate, but it's real, and people don't understand this, and that's why we need people like you to come on here and to shed the light on many different issues regarding health, regarding political situations. So I just want to let you know, I've loved you since the first time that I saw your tweets. I think you're a fabulous person. Pamela Davis Rees has been following you as well. I have. I want to thank each and every one of you for
I'll have to
being
send me
on
a
the
message
show.
so I can follow back.
I know. I'm a friend of yours on Facebook. So, but I follow you
I'm banned at the moment.
and Dave, dun, 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 as he goes walking across your keyboard.
Right.
Oh, fat
You guys
Dave.
don't know about Dave, her cat.
No. So
fat
anyway,
Dave.
we are running out of time. I'd hate to shut everybody down, but I'm going to have to.
Have a good evening, everyone. And it's goodbye from Nellie as well.
Is that Nellie? Hi, Nellie. How are you?
She
I got
doesn't care.
kisses for you. She doesn't hear. All right, we'll tell her I said hello.
She doesn't care, do you, Nellie? Do you care?
You don't
No.
care? You don't care, Nellie?
She's an unvaccinated, never had a vaccine.
I
She's
love you,
coming up-
Nellie.
She's 6 years old and never been seen by the vet.
Oh my God. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Awake Nation. We're going to be back for Monday through Saturday. We are live from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central. And I want to thank our guest for being our guest. I want to thank Karen Britt. She is East Coast Hub. And I want to thank Pamela Davis Reeves, Transform You Group.isogenetics. I can't even say that.
Isogenics.
And Scott Miller, millerwellness.com. And we look forward to seeing Kate again each and every Thursday at the same time. My name is Penny L.A. Shepherd. And on behalf of the Awake Nation, with David Zublik, my very, very good friend and co-host. I am his co-host, actually. I entreat you to join us again tomorrow and same time, same place. And I'm going to say thank you again, and we are out of here. So Shepherd out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye for today from the Awake Nation with co-host David Zublik and Penny L.A. Shepherd. We invite you to join us live on Rumble Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us for the Awake Nation News, 1 hour all news, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern. Followed by 4 hours of one-on-one interviews with influencers who defy the mainstream narrative. The Awake Nation, the truth with a shot of espresso. On behalf of the Awake Nation, with co-host David Zublik and Penny L.A. Shepherd, we thank you for watching the Awake Nation and ask you to join us again Monday through Saturday.